I don't know. It's just that... I don't know.
Tell us about it, Elaine.
You promise that you won't laugh at me?
Of course not.
All right, then. The reason I was so upset was the fact that I saw someone or something standing in that archway.
But, Elaine, David showed you that there was no one else in here. When the lights were put on, you saw for yourself that we were alone.
I'm not talking about something you can see in the light, Brian. I'm not talking about a human being.
You're sure you're not imagining this, Elaine?
Oh, I don't have that good an imagination, Brian.
Today's show is going to be a fantastic journey. We have Curry Stegen joining us today, and he's a retired Air Force Reserve officer with over 25 years of service. Thank you so much for your service. And he's been investigating and exploring the paranormal for close to 10 years now, and got involved in the paranormal to discover for himself if there really is life after death. His first year into his journey, he got the answer. And he's the author of a brand new book, Walking in the Shadows of Strangers, which is available on Amazon for pre-order. For over 5 years now, he's hosted the Passion of the Paranormal podcast, where he delves into the paranormal and all things unexplained. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal Podcast. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you all for joining us, and special thank you goes out to all of you who continue to support the podcast and continue to spread the word. Always remember, if any of you out there have experiences of your own that you'd like to share, feel free to email me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. Again, paranormalportalradio@gmail.com, and you too could be a guest on the show. Welcome him to the show. Hey, Curry, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me, Brett. It's good to be on with you.
And I'm excited to have this conversation with you because, of course, I love talking about this stuff. I guess that's why I do the show, but it's always interesting to talk to new people and get new perspectives on all of this and what are your experiences. So maybe the best place to kind of begin is, where did this start for you?
Yeah, that's kind of a long story, and that's what I get into in the book. But I like to, Brent, I like to think of myself as kind of a curious skeptic.
Sure.
So if you would have talked to me about this subject about 20 years ago, I probably would have just said, well, I'm not really sure. Jerry's still out for me on ghosts and hauntings, and, I'm not really sure where I'm at with it. My wife and I did start watching the Ghost Hunter show, I want to say roughly 2005 timeframe.
Oh, okay.
So what I had is a lot of people. So some people come into the paranormal because they've had experiences at a young age and they want some answers, right? So you often hear a lot of people say that, well, I had some weird experiences when I was younger. And, I wanted to get some answers, so that's how a lot of people seem to come into the paranormal.
Right.
I think I came in from a little bit different perspective, and mine was a lot of people are sharing stories with me, about ghosts. They've ghosts or hauntings or, paranormal experiences they've had. And, some of the people that I'm talking to are like, well, they seem pretty rational, right? I mean, they don't seem crazy, but it's always that old adage, I guess I will believe it when it happens to me.
Right.
Yeah. So it really, other than, and I mentioned in the book, I had a few kind of funny anecdotal stories that I share in the book, but they're not really anything I could chalk up to saying, yeah, that was definitely paranormal. I did have a UFO sighting when I was about 12 years old. A friend and I were outside just kind of talking, and it was I want to say it was the summertime, and we looked up in the sky, and both of us were just kind of like, what is that, right?
Sure.
We saw this craft, if you want to call it that, just kind of hovering in the sky. We couldn't hear anything. There was no, there was no audible noise or anything like that. No signs of propulsion. It looked like this thing just shot off, almost like it shot off out of the atmosphere. And so it was pretty short-lived. I mean, it happened really quick, but we kind of both just looked at each other and said, wow, what the crap was that?
Yeah. Airplanes don't usually shoot out of the atmosphere.
No. And see, the thing is, it was just kind of sitting there in the sky before it did that. So, could have been a helicopter. Well, if it would have just sat there, it was a ways up, maybe, but this thing just kind of shot up out of the sky. And so we never could explain that, but we kind of kept the story to ourselves because it was like, we're not going to go and talk to our parents about this and other friends, because what's the response you're going to get? Well, right, you guys saw a UFO, whatever.
Sure.
What are you guys smoking? You're going to get that kind of response. So maybe, just maybe, that experience, and that's the only one I ever had of a UFO. Never saw a UFO again, but maybe that just opened me up a little bit to possibilities, because I've always went back to that and said, man, I can't explain that. What was that?
Yeah.
But, let's kind of fast forward again to 2005. We were watching the Ghost Hunter show and became a fan of it, but I think I kind of liked their approach too, because, there were times when they would investigate a case and nothing would really happen. And then they would go and talk to the clients and say, hey, we didn't capture any evidence of there being anything paranormal going on here. Doesn't mean that your place is not haunted. It just means we didn't capture evidence of it. And to some people, maybe that was a little bit boring at times. I don't know. But I liked that there was kind of that reality factor to it.
Yes.
And so, again, I had friends and family members, coworkers that shared stories with me. And it's like, well, that's interesting. But fast forward to 2013, a friend of ours forwarded us an invite to go to a ghost hunting event. I live in northern Utah. It was up in Bergen City at this old mill. It's called the Barren Woolen Mill. And that place has been in existence. It's now burned down. By the way, it burned down about, I want to say, 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's kind of sad because it was a cool location. So we went along and, I told my wife, why don't we talked about it. I said, why don't we just go check this out? Again, I'm in the curious phase right now. I'm like, I had low expectations. I was like, I'm not really sure, what's going to happen here. If I do decide to delve into this stuff, maybe nothing's going to happen and I'm just going to, get bored with it and say, yeah, there's nothing really to this. It's not really how it happened, though. That's the interesting thing. So we went on this event. And we're just following along kind of with the group. There was a guy leading it, and he knew the history really well at the location. And, they were doing some trying to do some interactions with mag flashlights, where you kind of loosen the tip of the thing. And it was almost if they were kind of getting some interaction to questions and such. But, I wasn't sold on that. I was like, well,
sure.
Maybe there's some trickery involved, or it's just a loose connection. I wasn't really sold on anything like that. About halfway through the night, I went to the car, and these buildings, there's several buildings on this location. And I went back to the car. I think I was going back to get another flashlight. My wife wanted a flashlight, and I had one in the car. So I'm walking back in between two buildings, and the main building is to my right. And I look up, and I see this floating, if you want to call it an orb, this green kind of ball of light or orb kind of just floating there.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, and, I'm looking up at it, and I'm kind of almost scratching my head going, what the heck is that? And there were we were broken up into two groups. So it's up on the third floor of the main building. I'm looking up and watching this thing. And, half of the windows are broken out. This is a very old building. Mm-hmm. And so I'm yelling up there, is there anybody up there? I'm pretty sure that the other group is not up there. Our group was in the back, one of the back buildings, so we were nowhere near that building. The other group was, come to find out, was in another location too. But, of course, I'm yelling up there, trying to make sure there's nobody up there. This glowing green ball of light just kind of floats up towards, the top of the window there and kind of hovers there for a few seconds and then just disappears. So I was like, well, could that be somebody with maybe, my skeptical mind, is that a colored flashlight or something? But it kind of changed size a little bit, Brent. And then it floated up and then it eventually just, disappeared.
How big an orb was this? Just if you could give us a graphical representation.
Gosh, maybe diameter was 3 or 4 inches, so not real big. Maybe a little bit bigger. I don't know. It wasn't real big. So, you could say, well, maybe that was somebody's flashlight, but there was nobody up there.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so there was nobody up there at the time. So I went to the car, grabbed I think I grabbed the flashlight, and then I headed back and rejoined the group. And we're finishing up, and, again, there was a few, seemed to, the flashlight thing that they were doing was kind of interesting. A few people said they saw shadows. We're finishing up the event, and we're walking back to go back to the parking lot. And same place I was walking through. So I talked about, I saw that weird glowing ball of light. To the left was like this big storage building that was part of the overall part of the facility. And we had went in there earlier and walked around. And I'm ahead of the crowd, just we were, like I said, walking back to the parking lot. And I just walked in past the opening of this storage building. And I pop my head in. And I see this shadow just kind of dart across the wall. And,
wow.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of standing there. And, again, almost scratching my head like, well, that's weird. No cars were coming by or anything like that. But even if they were, it looked like the shadow of a person, almost like I had spooked something. And this shadow just darted across. And then the group caught up to me. And, I'm kind of I'm still looking into the building. And one of the guys who's in the group was like, just asked me what's going on. I said, well, I saw a shadow dart across the wall. And he just kind of looked at me and said, yeah, we have that sometimes here.
Wow, it's like you might as well said I saw a deer in the front lawn.
Yeah, right. And so they, walked in for a minute and, they had voice recorders and, they were asking questions. I had a voice recorder I borrowed from my sister-in-law. It wasn't even my own voice recorder because this was like my first outing doing this. I didn't capture anything on the voice recorder on the first visit. And, they walked around for a minute and then we ended the event. I also talked to the guy I think I mentioned that there was the guy that was leading the event. He was, like I said, he's pretty knowledgeable about the location and the history. And, we were talking to him about some of the history. And then I just happened to ask him, do you know any other locations that are, that someone like me who doesn't belong to a paranormal group maybe can just go check out? And he mentioned another location that was out, again, I mentioned I'm in northern Utah, that's out past Tooele in the Oquirrh Mountains. And it's Mercer Cemetery. It's all that's left of an old mining town. So it used to be Mercer, Utah, and it was a booming mining town in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And all that's left of this location is an old cemetery sitting up on a hill. It's actually up on the mountain side. And he said, we've been to this location several times, and he said, we've had a lot of weird stuff happen. And I said, well, isn't that trespassing to go up there? And he said, no, you can go up to the location anytime you want. It's, it's free to go up there, but for anybody in the public, you can go there day or night. So I somehow talked my wife into going out there.
Okay.
And I don't know how I coaxed her into doing it. But it was an early November night. So just, mind you, normally in November, it's already getting pretty cold here in northern Utah. This year, it just happened to be kind of a little bit unseasonably warm for November.
Mm-hmm.
And there were, we didn't have any snow or anything in the mountains. It, like I said, was kind of unusual because usually by that time, at least in the mountains, there's a little bit of snow. It's a little bit cold, but we made the trek out there. It's probably about 10 miles past Tooele. And we found the location. We found it on the internet, there was directions and how to get there. So we get there, we park our car, we get out, and it's probably about a quarter of a mile trek up this hill to get to the cemetery. There's a sign down below. It says Merker Cemetery, and it's got dates on there. The last time someone was laid to rest there at the cemetery was 1950.
Oh my gosh, that is old.
Yeah, it's really old. And so, Brent, just for your listeners, I don't go trekking around cemeteries at night and trespassing. That's a silly thing to do for the most part, but this is the exception. Mm-hmm. It's a really cool location. It's a really beautiful location. You can see every star in the sky. There's no light pollution up there. And there was not a soul in sight. So let's say you go up there in the summertime, you're probably going to see some people up there in the daytime shooting or riding ATVs or, that sort of thing. But they're not a soul in sight. It's starting to get dark, but it's not quite dark yet. We make the trek up the hill to the old cemetery. There's a little sign right as you get to the top of the cemetery, just a little wooden sign that says Merker Cemetery. And, there's a bunch of juniper trees, and, we can hear some coyotes howling off in the distance, but we don't see a soul in sight. There's nobody out there. I mean, you're literally out in the middle of nowhere. Now, you're looking out into the valley, and you can see the Army depot, the Tooele Army Depot Annex out there. And it's just a few buildings. It's clear out off in the distance, but there's nobody in sight. So we're just walking around. I've got a voice recorder. I decided to purchase a voice recorder. We've got a mag flashlight. We both got flashlights, and we're just walking around. My wife's a little bit uneasy. She's a little bit worried about squatters or something like that. So,
right.
But we're just walking around the cemetery, investigating, walking around the perimeter, making sure there's nobody else out there. And again, there was not a soul in sight. The sun setting, beautiful view. It's a really nice location just to go up there and look at the stars and such. But we're walking around and, we're trying to what you would call, I guess, EVP sessions. We're asking questions, trying to get some interaction on the flashlights. Nothing's happening. And, this went on. I think we stayed there for maybe about, 40 minutes or so, 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. It was getting really dark. My wife didn't really want to stay. It was getting a little bit colder. So we kind of talked about making our way out and heading back down to the car. So just before we did, I stopped at the sign there at the top of the hill, and I said, well, let's make one last-ditch effort to try and get some interaction in the flashlight. And so I start asking questions again and asking if somebody was there with us, if they could turn the flashlight on. Well, the flashlight went on, like, right after I'd asked.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so then I asked whoever was there with us if they could turn the flashlight off. Well, the flashlight went off. So at this point, it seems like it's, like, going off on command. My wife's like, oh, yeah, that's really not a good thing it's not a good technique, it's just a loose connection. I'm like, yeah, but this is kind of interesting because we'd been trying the technique for a while and nothing was happening.
Uh-huh.
So she said, I think we ought to go. It's getting late and, it's getting a little bit colder. And just not long after she says that, I start hearing whistling.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so not like a bird whistling, but like someone who would be like walking down the street, they're in a good mood, and they're just kind of casually whistling, right? They're just kind of jovially whistling. That's what it sounded like. And, of course, my wife is very uneasy at this point after hearing that. And she's tugging on my arm. We need to go, time to go. And so we start making our way down the hill. Now, I had my recorder on, and I did catch the whistle. Oh,
nice. Good.
Yeah, so it's a little bit faint, but you can hear it in the background. Mm-hmm. And, we both talked about it. We're like, that couldn't have been a bird. That sounded like a person whistling, right? There was nobody else in sight, no cars around. So we get back in the car and we leave, drive back to Ogden. And, of course, I went back and listened to the voice recorder. I'm like, well, Cole, that whistling sound is on there. Okay, so that happened. Now, I mentioned I had a sister-in-law let me borrow her voice recorder when we went on that event. Well, she was also working with the paranormal group.
Oh, okay.
So she kept mentioning, dropping hints to me, hey, maybe you should come along with the paranormal group. We go to some cool locations, and maybe they'll allow you to come along as a guest to just kind of check things out, right? So I've already had these two experiences, and it's kind of whetting my appetite. I'm getting more and more curious about it. I'm not like 100% sold that, I've experienced ghosts or,
yes,
anything like that, but I'm, it's kind of furthering my curiosity, and I'm wanting to explore more. So, she just talked to me about it again. She said, yeah, you went out there and explored Mercer and stuff, and, we go to some great locations. Why don't you just go on the website and, apply to, apply to the group, and then, they can invite you along as a guest, and you can check us out and see how things are. So that's kind of how it went, I just, I went on, she told me to go on the website, just apply, and, went on the website, applied to be a member in training and to go along with the group. And so that's what happened. And, as they say, the rest is history. I just started working with the group. I went on a couple of investigations with them as a guest. We went to a location up in Ogden Canyon, the Great Cliff Lodge, which that's kind of a place where now paranormal groups kind of do public events now. It's known to be, it's known to be moderately active. We've captured things there, EVPs and whatnot. So that was my first outing with the group, and then I just kind of started going on more investigations, and it just kind of blossomed from there. And I've been working with the group now for going on 10 years. So that's kind of how it happened.
I'd walked into the darkened bedroom. On the bed was Elaine's father. It didn't take a second look for me to know that he was dead. I switched off the light and walked back into the hallway to tell Elaine what happened. And then from the room there had come an eerie, quiet laughter. In the darkness of that room was some unknown evil power.
Around you, in every room of the house, in the darkness outside, we are around you. This time you shall not escape.
Okay, so getting back to the whistling sound at the cemetery, which I think is incredibly, it's got to be an incredibly haunting experience to hear that in person. But is there any body of water near there? Is there like any inland lakes or whatever that might have? Because I used to live on the shore of the Mississippi in a wide spot called Lake Pepin, and sometimes the boaters going by, even though they're going by and they might be close to a mile or so away, if you stand on the shore, the sound would just carry as if they were talking, several feet from you. Something about the way the sound waves, carry so clearly over water. Is that the case up there at all?
No, and I'm not aware of any bodies of water close by. The closest one that I would be aware of would be the Great Salt Lake.
Yeah, which is quite a bit away. Yeah.
Yeah, which is quite a ways away. I'm not aware of. I mean, we've kind of walked around that area and that location.
Sure.
I don't know of any even, streams or real close by or bodies of water. So.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I just wanted to throw that out there because, I think that's a powerful indicator in and of itself, this random whistling sound in the middle of nowhere, and when nobody is around, that's a powerful indicator that you're maybe not alone. So I just wanted to make sure to throw that out there, because that's the only thing that could occur to me is like, even from long distances, water can really make sound just come right to you. It's like, I don't know, it must be because of the smooth surface, the waves don't dissipate or whatever, but that's incredible. And getting to the flashlight tests, I think of course as you rightfully stated, there's some people that say, wow, that's just loose connections, you can't really rely on that. But when those things are happening in perfect concert to questions being asked, that really removes a lot of just chance, because it would, I don't know what the mathematical odds of it functioning and performing those actions exactly when you're asking a question that it needs to indicate, but the odds have got to be astronomical that it would just by chance click off at the same time or on right in cue with a question. And that's where, it really is important for those of you out there listening. The flashlights, if you leave a flashlight just laying around, it can be triggered atmospherically, maybe by, humidity or any number of factors to, possibly go on and off. But when it happens in complete concert with questions, it really escalates the validity of that test as an indicator of presences.
Yeah, so the other interesting thing about it is like I said, we had been trying that for probably 40 minutes or so.
Right.
As we were walking around and nothing was happening. It's just interesting that it happened all of a sudden right as we were getting ready to leave. And then, shortly after that, we captured the whistling. Brent, I've been to that location several times. We've had a lot of things that have happened there.
Sure. Yeah.
So I've captured EVPs. Now I'll give I know we don't want to probably drag on this story, but I'll just give one more story. So I mentioned it was early November. It was like the first week in November. So we got together a group of friends and we went back out there a week later. So I talked some people into going, along with my sister-in-law, the one I mentioned, who talked me into, coming along with the paranormal group and eventually joining the group. So we went back out there about a week later, and kind of a similar like to what I just mentioned. We were walking around and just, exploring, doing those sorts of things. And then I broke off from the group and headed back over to the side because, that's where I had that experience. And this was getting towards the end of the night shortly before we were getting ready to leave. And I went over there and had a flashlight, again, mag flashlight in the hand. I had a voice recorder in my hand. I set the voice recorder up there on the sign and started asking questions. And so nothing happened that night, really, anything too unusual, other than some coyotes in the distance and such. So, we packed up and went home. And I was going back and reviewing my voice recorder. And I got to the part where I was standing in front of the sign alone. And the rest of the group of people are far off in the distance. And I'm listening to the voice recorder. And, I asked, I was asking about the flashlight again, trying to get some interaction with the flashlight. Nothing was happening. And then a male voice came through. Mm-hmm. And so what I did is I listened to it. I looped the audio. And, I heard a sentence. I heard a full sentence. So I looped the audio clip. I asked my sister-in-law to listen to it. I said, I'm not going to tell you what it says, but just go back and listen to this and tell me what you hear. And so she went back and listened to the audio clip, and she took the headphones off, and she said, it sounds like it's saying time to turn off the flashlight.
Yeah, that's pretty specific.
Yeah, I said, bingo, that's exactly what I hear.
Oh, fantastic. That's a great capture.
Yeah, and that was one of my very first EVPs I captured, and it was a full sentence. Now, Brent, I've been to so many locations, and there's a location that our paranormal group's been going to, and we went there multiple times. And we've had so many experiences at that location. But this was the very first EVP pretty much that I had captured, and it was a sentence. The other unusual thing about this EVP is it kind of had a digital quality to the voice. And that's what was bizarre about it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the voices, and it's kind of faint, but I can, I heard it pretty much right away. I think I heard something the first time, rewound the audio and listened to it again. I was like, second go around, I'm like, yeah, sounds like it's time to turn off the flashlight. So we've had more stuff. I could go on for probably another hour or so about the experiences that we've had at that location. I actually talked the paranormal group into going out there a couple of years later, and we went and visited there. But so, I've done several outings there, many locations, other locations that I've investigated with the paranormal group where I've had a lot of experiences. So that's what I talk about in the book. It's really about how I started and how, my expectations were fairly low. Mm-hmm. I thought maybe I would go out and 3 or 4 times and maybe nothing would happen. And I'd just say, hey, all right, nothing really to this. And so no need to do this anymore. But that's not how it happened. Just like I mentioned, really things happened right away that I just had to explore more and had to find out more. So that's really kind of how it started out.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I have to agree that, Of all the, and I think that a lot of the ghost hunting shows, not a lot, but some of them, I don't know, they strain credibility in a lot of ways, or they seem, their approaches, and there's less now than before, but when these things first came out, there were some shows that were just badgering and acting as if these locations owed them something, and they were, pushing and provoking and stuff. But I always appreciated the approach on Ghost Hunters, and I can't vouch for what evidence they produced or, if anything was fabricated. I've heard the rumors, but I always thought, they go in, they're calm, they're collected, they're respectful, and they seem to do a really good job, at least presenting themselves not as a bunch of, I don't know, hyper
thrill seekers.
Yeah, like it's the newest reality TV kind of clique. They would go in and they were just introducing themselves and having conversations, caught some what appeared to be really good evidence throughout the years, and I always liked that about them. And the other shows were like, "Oh, you want to pick on girls? Pick on me," or something like that. It's this really, bravado and arrogance, and it's like, wow, that's probably not gonna help. And if things do happen, that location's gonna be a little more hostile after that, because you've just badgered these things, whatever they are, and I don't pretend to know. But I always thought Ghost Hunters did a nice job with how they conducted their investigations.
Yeah, and one of the things that also drew me in to work with the paranormal group is that very first investigation I went along with them on. I just, it was just kind of along for the ride. Just observing and, watching how they did things. They were very methodical, and, they had a process for how they set up equipment. They right away they mentioned, hey, talk in a normal voice. Do not talk or whisper, because they're placing voice recorders all over in the location. And, our voice recorders are going to pick it up, and, somebody's going to be listening to it, and, they could interpret that as an EVP. There was a process from start to finish about how they set up equipment. They also right away, mentioned that, hey, we try to get to the normal first before we ever go to the paranormal. So if there's a loud bang, if there's a noise, anything like that, we're going to try and find a rational explanation for it first.
Yeah.
If we can't, then we might start moving towards the paranormal. Mm-hmm. So, even if you get something on the voice recorder, you're going to go back and analyze it and have other people listen to it and try and make sure that, that's not somebody in the group. That's not an outside noise. And after you start doing this for a while, you really get used to, what it sounds like when somebody's outside or far away versus what, sounds like something close to the voice recorder. You just get a little bit more accustomed to those sorts of sounds. But, Brian, I was really impressed about how the group did that. And it was never, if you hear something, don't always assume that that's paranormal. Let's kind of investigate it. Let's make sure. And I'll give you a case in point. So same location I'm talking about first time, and I went back there several times. The owners said, hey, we've got this. It was an old, wooden cabinet, one of those old latches, little metal latches that you have to turn and lock it in. And they say, we keep getting this thing keeps opening up. And so one of the owners says, the ghosts keep opening this thing up, right? So we're like, well, let's test it. Let's look at this and test it and see if we can recreate it. And so, of course, one of the things we noticed is when you would shut that latch, if you did not turn the latch all the way and you shut the drawer and didn't turn the latch all the way, if you walked past or bumped it or something, it would come open.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I think we pretty much chalked that up to, people were not closing the latch securely and it was coming open. So we kind of debunked that.
And that's powerful too, because I think you really, as you stated before, you've got to look at this stuff first through the eyes of a skeptic and look for the possible natural causes for things. I think there's a lot of people out there with a real confirmation bias. They want there to be hauntings and they want there to be activity. So everything they hear, see, experience automatically is just ghosts. And I don't think that really moves the needle in the field for anybody else, because if you're not really addressing the mechanics of what could be happening, it doesn't really belong as evidence then. And one case in point, I've lived in several houses through the years, and I'm here to tell you, and many of them were very old houses, and each house had really specific and unique sounds that it makes just naturally throughout the course of a year. And it would be really easy to say, well, did something get dropped, or what was that noise? But after you've lived in a place for a while, you do become, conditioned to what is a normal noise versus what is an abnormal noise. But being a paranormal investigator, if you come in, you don't have the benefit of that familiarity, and so it becomes really important, I think, to do just that, to look for what are the natural causes first, rather than going, well, that was a ghost.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that we'll do when we come into a new location is, of course, we kind of do walk-arounds, and we'll use what they call EMF meters.
Sure.
Electromagnetic, I don't remember what the frequency, meters, just to kind of gauge where there may be high EMF, right? If there's a large electrical junction box that's putting off a lot of EMF. And I'll give you a case in point in just a minute that it was another one we were able to debunk, because that's part of this too, is, you want to capture evidence of the paranormal, but you also want to find those normal, possible rational explanations.
Absolutely. Yep.
So we will go into a location and we will kind of sit quiet for a while and listen. Okay, so like if there's floor creaks or there's loud noises, maybe the HVAC system's kicking on, right? And it's causing a rattling noise, or, there's a vent somewhere that's making a door move and people are claiming the door's getting, opened or whatever. We're looking for those. So we'll kind of just sit quiet and get used to the sounds of the building. Now, we're one night into a location, so you're kind of pressed for time. So, we're not going to spend a great deal of time doing it, but we do spend, maybe 10, 15 minutes trying to get used to the sounds of a building before we kind of go into our normal motions of doing investigating, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, it makes sense. I think that's phenomenal practice, because again, if you're not familiar with the location, there's a lot of things that are going to seem anomalous, but it's just because you've never been there before.
Yeah, and I'm gonna give you a real quick other case in point. So I've done some investigations with friends outside of the group. And one was a private school. I'm not at liberty to say the school. It's here in northern Utah, but I went with a couple of friends because they wanted us to come check this place out. So me and my sister-in-law and a couple of friends of ours, and one of the people that were with us they volunteered to clean the school, and they got us into the building, and there were a lot of stories about stuff going on there. One of the spots where there were a lot of people reporting uneasy feelings, being watched, those sorts of things, was in a hallway leading out into the basketball court, into the gymnasium and the basketball court. And we were checking this hallway out, and there was a huge junction box, electrical junction box there. And, of course, we were getting real high readings off of our EMF meters. And we kind of chalked that up to EMF is known to cause hallucinations and uneasiness and, those sorts of things. They've done a lot of testing on it. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of chalked that up to that electrical junction box putting off a lot of EMF to why people were getting those feelings. Now, we investigated that location, and we had some interesting things happen that night, but that particular spot, we kind of debunked that and chalked that up to being, that electrical box there putting off high EMF. So there's been several times where we've kind of debunked claims in locations, just basically doing some, rational thought processes and such.
That's outstanding, yeah. And I think you're right. EMF, the EM fields can be extraordinarily potent to individuals. And I think maybe there's some people that are more susceptible than others, but I mean, it's kind of akin to, the health issues living under high tension power lines. I mean, there's known issues that result in people living in those locations. And so it's no different than a faulty or maybe improperly shielded electrical box can create a smaller version of those fields. And yeah, you're right. The whole paranoia thing is really big around that. Like, I got a bad feeling when I'm in the basement. Well, yeah, but you do a sweep and you find out that there's, those issues. That really does go a long way to explain it. At least it's strongly probable that it is just electrical issues rather than being spiritual presences.
Account of a happening such as you relate. And we shall live on the earth, and they shall not
see us. Yes, it has been foretold by the ruler of the darkness. They who live by day, retire to sleep by night, shall never know that we walk with them, that we watch them, that we wait for our chance. Only in the night will they see us. For in the daylight we are not seen. Only in the night, when the darkness grows together and the forms of the shadow people are shaped from the blackness, they will know us.
Then they will know that we are their companions, for we are the shadow people.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, there's been several times where we've kind of chalked things up to, something normal going on that, like I said, I mentioned the junction box, the little cabinet, but there's been several others where we've kind of said, there's a vent here turning on, it's moving the door a little bit, it's causing a draft, whatever the case may be. Now, we're not going to go back to the clients and say, hey, your place is not haunted because, you have to be respectful, and you have to realize that, hey, even though you may not go in, and that's happened before, went to locations and nothing's ever happened. And, you just sit there in the dark and, honestly, it's kind of boring sometimes. But you have those experiences that keep you coming back too. And I've had plenty of them. But there's been plenty of times where we went into a location and it's just quiet as can be and nothing happens. And again, you're not going to go back to the client and say, hey, your place is not haunted. But we are going to mention that, hey, like just the cabinet, like, hey, we did test that and we think there is a rational explanation for what's going on there. But you can do that with a client and do it in a respectful manner.
Yeah, and that's the other part of paranormal investigating that makes it even harder. And I've always said that, capturing paranormal activity is really kind of akin to trying to capture lightning in a jar. It's like you don't know exactly when or where or how it's going to happen in a lot of cases, and it's not on a schedule. It's just when things happen, they happen, and there's any number of factors that can be, contributing factors in that. But I think that a lot of people, and maybe it's the influx of the ghost shows, because you turn it on, they go to a location, and wow, things are crazy, and then the episode's over, and it maybe creates an unrealistic expectation of investigating the paranormal, because this stuff isn't on a schedule. It'll just occur. I've lived in one house that was only seemed to have activity through certain periods of the year. It wasn't consistent, like every day something was going on. It could be 1 month things were going on, or 1 week, and then it could be several months before something else happens. And it's still a valid phenomena. I think it's just that there's something is triggering that activity, or it is an intelligence and just decides not to show up for you that night.
Yes, absolutely. And, Brent, I think I mentioned that we have a location that we've went to many times. Again, it's another location. I'm not going to mention the specific location other than to say it's an old abandoned hotel. And there was a lot of stuff going on, I think, during the time that hotel was in operation, prostitution, drugs, that sort of thing. So it's the kind of place you would expect that, would be kind of ripe for maybe haunted activity or paranormal activity. And we pretty much had everything under the sun happen at this location that you would expect to have at a haunted location. Anywhere from people being touched. There's even been a time where a ball was thrown, and nobody was close to the ball when it was actually thrown. Hundreds and hundreds of EVPs we've cataloged at the location. I've seen a self-illuminating ball of light go in front of me, and I couldn't find a light source for it. Me as a paranormal investigator, I've never seen a full-body apparition. That's kind of the holy grail.
Yes.
That's something that everybody wants to experience. Well, I've seen shadows, but that doesn't qualify to me as a full-body apparition. Other people in the group have experienced that at that location. We've experienced battery drains, brand new batteries and voice recorders, and they just die, or camera batteries died. We've had disembodied voices. Like I already mentioned, the EVPs. We've had doors slamming when we're downstairs, and upstairs a door will slam, and we'll go up there, and of course, we're trying to walk around, make sure there's no flashies, nobody snuck in the building.
Flashies.
Yeah, it's a term we use in the paranormal group, but okay. So anyways, we're walking around trying to make sure that none of that's going on, and yeah,
it's fascinating, this stuff, and I think it's an incredible pursuit, but again, it's quite a bit of difference between ghost hunting and paranormal investigating. What you're describing to me is truly investigating, because ghost hunting, you just go to a location, see if you see something, then you leave. But the investigators will go in and do, and test against, possibilities, and debunking and actively looking, for quantifiable evidence. And I think that that's really powerful. And there's nothing wrong with either of them, or nothing. It just depends on the individual. But I think the kind of pursuit you guys are doing, I think, is really powerful, because it really does substantiate or help to substantiate phenomena.
Right. Yeah, and I really don't like the term ghost hunting.
Sure.
And I think if you're just somebody who you want to go out and explore, and maybe, there's, to me, it almost sounds like thrill seeking, right?
Yeah.
You're just,
Sure.
I'm not going to lie. There's a thrill aspect to this. There is a thrill aspect to doing it. I mean, there's times where I've had experiences that have been a little bit unsettling.
Mm-hmm.
I never ran out of a location or been so frightened that I couldn't stay in there. I did have an experience where I was alone in a building, and if we have time, I can share that story.
Absolutely. Please.
Pretty remarkable. So we were investigating. We'd been at this location several times. It's all museum. And again, I'm not going to mention the specific name of it, but we were investigating there. I think there was 3 or 4 of us this night. And I was investigating with another guy. We had 2 different locations we were investigating this night. There was another one just down the street. We were over investigating that other location, came back. And the other guy that was with me, he had to leave. He had to get back home. Now we had to drive a ways to get to this location, so he had to drive back and get back home. So the other 2 investigators went over to the other location. I came back to the museum. I was sitting up in what we call base camp, where we have all our equipment. We had a live audio recorder. We were monitoring from base camp. Had an audio recorder downstairs with audio cord running up to the base camp. I'm sitting in there. The other 2 female investigators went to the other location. I'm in the building alone. And I'm just sitting there monitoring audio down in the basement because that's where we experience a lot of the activity.
Uh-huh.
And so if there's any unsettling time, this would be it. So I'm sitting there listening to audio, and I start hearing what sounds like the audio cord getting picked up and slapped on the ground.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and this happened probably 3 or 4 times. So I opened the door. I'm back in that upstairs room. I walk out with the headphones, and I'm still listening. It happens a couple more times. I take the headphones off, and I walk towards the stairs. I'm not hearing anything. I said, well, I got to go down and investigate just to make sure,
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody down there. I walk down there and, of course, walk around, and nothing's going on, and I'm not hearing anything. There's nobody down there. I'm down there alone. And all of a sudden, upstairs, I start hearing footsteps above me.
Ooh.
So that's not unusual for this location. We get phantom footsteps and noises all the time. But, mind you, I'm alone in the location right now. It's the only time I've ever been alone in the location. And I start hearing footsteps above me. So I'm like, okay, well, this is a little unusual. So I'm going to go back upstairs. Of course, I go back upstairs, and I walk over to that area where I heard the footsteps. Nothing, don't hear anything and don't see anything, nothing. I go back to base camp, and, I'm just sitting there listening to audio again. I'm like, well, that was real unusual. Same thing starts happening again. Start hearing the audio, sounding like the audio cord getting picked up and slapped on the ground. And so once again, got to go downstairs, walk around, investigate, took my voice recorder and all that kind of stuff. The strange thing is, I've been so many locations where I get EVPs, and at this location, I never get EVPs. It's more the kind of the phantom noises and stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing, but I go back downstairs, and I'm walking around just making sure nobody's down there, and the walking starts again.
Wow.
Upstairs. Yeah, so I'm a little bit unsettled because it feels like something's just kind of toying with me or messing with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
Yeah. So, am I running out of the building? No, but I'm a little bit spooked and a little bit uneasy just because I'm in the building alone. And most of the time when we're in a location, we're not alone. We're with other investigators. So I had a 2-way radio. I radioed to the other investigators. Hey, when are you guys coming back?
Uh-huh.
Can you kind of hurry back? And so, of course, they came back about 10 minutes later, and I explained to them what had happened. And that was a bit unsettling, being in the building alone and having that go on. So
Right.
I just wanted to share that because there are times when, there's been very few times when I've been really kind of frightened. I don't know if I want to say fully frightened. I was uneasy and a little bit unsettled in that experience.
Well, and it's interesting because, with things like footsteps and stuff, they can be just residual, where they're just the theory for those of you listening that may not know. Residual means that it's basically a recording, maybe an energetic or psychic recording of just something that may have happened in a location, and it replays just like a videotape. So there's no real interaction. It just happens. You may be there to see it or hear it or experience it, but it's not really targeting anything. It's just like, for some reason, somehow, some way, this event just replayed, and may do so periodically over years or decades or whenever. But an intelligent haunt is like something that's absolutely interacting with the people there. It's maybe targeting someone or doing activities much like you just described. It's the footsteps on their own, as you said, the location's known for this, may seem residual, but the fact that they only happened when you were drawn downstairs because of the slapping cable, and it was just a cat and mouse. It was, like you said, toying with you is what it seems like. And that would definitely be something intelligent and aware of your presence, or at least more likely.
Right. So the very first time I ever felt getting touched at a location was at that same location I was just talking about. So that's the bizarre thing about it. What types of activity happen at certain locations differ. Some produce lots of EVP, and some, things happen like getting touched, phantom noises, that sort of thing. You already kind of alluded to this, Brent, but that's the interesting and almost, I dare I say, almost frustrating thing about paranormal investigating is you go into a location and, you've had a lot of experiences there, and then you go on another night, just like the other hotel location I mentioned, we've had so many things happen, and on that particular night, absolutely nothing happens. It's just dead quiet.
Sure.
Right. And so that's kind of the frustrating nature of doing this, is that happens, and you think, well, why on other occasions did we have, 3 or 4 interesting things happen during the night, and then on another night, it's just dead quiet.
Yeah.
And it just kind of, it's hard to wrap your brain around it, because you think, well, why is that? Or, why did I get, 4 or 5 different EVPs, and a couple of them seemed to be intelligent responses. And that's happened many times at that hotel location. I've had my name called. I've been called names.
Sure.
I actually got called a jerk one time, and I was with a female investigator. We were setting up, and I got a male voice come through, and I said, I'm pretty sure that wasn't directed at the female. I think that was directed at me. And we've been, another time we're setting up equipment, a female voice comes through and says, what are you guys doing?
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
Yeah, and the reason why you mentioned intelligent, those seem to be intelligent responses to something we're doing in the environment, in the location.
Right.
Where a lot of them just come through and they're absolutely random.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
A voice comes through and, I don't know, says, we had at a location I did recently, it sounded like a voice just came through and just said a random word. And I'm trying to remember what the word was, but it wasn't in response to anything we were doing. Mm-hmm. It was very clear, and it, there was clear vocal tone and everything there, but it just was completely random. Wow. Probably the majority of the EVPs we get are that way.
Oh.
Probably 10 to 20% of them seem to be like kind of intelligent or responding to something you're doing.
Well, and I think the other thing that's really powerful with what you guys are doing is when you repeatedly visit a location, I think it does build a familiarity, because I think in some cases, many cases, I don't know, it's just purely speculation, but these are intelligences. They are there for whatever reason they're there, but I mean, just think about how we react to strangers versus how we react to people that we're at least acquainted with. And it certainly opens up maybe additional comfort or willingness to interact when you're familiar with someone versus who the hell is that? You know what I mean? So the fact that, you know, how many ghost, experiences have you heard where we moved into this house and for the first, month, 2 months, 6 months, whatever, it was really quiet and fine. And then, so right. I think that by building a familiarity with revisiting locations, I think really is a fantastic technique, because whatever these things are, they seem to be plenty intelligent and plenty aware of the fact that people are coming there. But if it's just a one-off, you may or may not get anything, and it might just be because, they're just tucked in a corner going, I don't know who these people are or what they're doing, But if you'd been there a number of times, then they at least have a familiarity with you and maybe more prone to interact. So my hat's off to you guys.
Yeah, and it's just yielded so much over the years in terms of the different types of things we've experienced there. And that's what the amazing thing is. You keep coming back because you want to have more things happen. You want to experience more there. Now, Brent, some people, if they got a voice that came on their voice recorder and called them a name or something like that, there may be people that would say, there's something bad there, and I'm not going back.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm. To me, I've never really had anything bad happen to me, and that's where, I talk about it in my new book, The Paranormal Fear Factor. The Hollywood, sensationalized claims that, people are experiencing demonic activity. Some of this is played out in some of the paranormal shows. I've never had anything that I can truly say was bad. Now, I mentioned that experience was unsettling just a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
But it's never been anything that made me run out of a building or be afraid of doing this because, hey, maybe on that particular night, I just happened to be annoying a ghost, a spirit. Maybe I was doing something that was annoying them.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean that it's anything bad. It's demonic. We've even had what we think is a male spirit up on the third floor of this location that a lot of females get uneasy feelings in that particular location. We brought females in, first time in the location. We don't tell them anything about what's going on. Walk around, walk up to that third floor and up into it's centered in one corner of the area, in right next to where actually it's centered around this room, I should say. And females get a very uneasy feeling in that particular spot. And we brought new guests in that went up to that spot and like, ooh, I don't like the way that feels, right?
Uh-huh.
So having said that, I also feel energy at times. And I say that because I've learned to trust what my body feels sometimes.
Oh,
and,
absolutely. Yeah.
I'll give you a case in point. We were in a location here in Ogden. We've got Ogden historic 25th Street here, which there's some locations here that along 25th Street that are very interesting that we've investigated. And one is I'll just say the location, formerly the Ben Lomond Hotel. It's now the Bigelow, and it's actually turned into apartment buildings, but it's a very, very old hotel. Been there since the early 1900s. There's a lot of history there. Me and another investigator got an opportunity. It was just two of us to go investigate the basement of that location. Now, in Ogden, there was a tunnel system that was built that connected all these different buildings along 25th Street. There was a lot of stuff going on, underground gambling, during Prohibition. There was bootlegging and all kinds of crazy stuff going on, prostitution. Anyways, long story short, we're walking in this little side tunnel, and I just walked into what felt like a wall of energy. Head to toe, that static electricity feeling. Now, I asked the female investigators with me. She walked up to me. I said, "Do you feel anything?" And she said, "No, I don't feel anything." So I go back and I'm listening to the voice recorder and I'm playing it back. And a second or two after I said that, I captured a male guttural voice just come through the recorder. And Brent, it sounded literally like that voice was right next to the recorder. Oh. And it was right after I felt that energy. Now, that's happened probably, 4 or 5 different times at locations where I've either captured something on audio or something else has happened. Another person has experienced something when I started feeling, strong energy. So I have also learned to kind of listen to my body, if you will, because there's sometimes where I've felt energy. Another location, I was in a certain room, and I started feeling that heavy energy, and I walked down, and I had a walkie-talkie, 2-way radio that just all of a sudden started screaming and died.
Oh, wow.
It started squealing. So, yeah, maybe the batteries were low, but maybe it's not a coincidence that that happened right when I was feeling really strong energy.
Yeah.
So, that's another thing I always like to say is because it's not always just about equipment. Sometimes it's about what you feel. I don't see, other than, like I said, I've seen some shadows. I typically don't see spirits or apparitions, but I do feel things.
That's powerful. Yeah. And I think those are great experiences. But I'm glad that most of your experiences have been very positive and good and hopefully will continue to be. But I have one final question I got to ask because this is always something that I think is important to consider. But in your experiences, have you had anything follow you home?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, wonderful. That's cool.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes we hear that. It's like, I went to this location, got home, and now my silverware's moving and stuff. It's like,
right. And that, that's something my wife's always, she says, well, what if you bring something home? I said, well, it's never happened, and I really don't. I'm not aware of anybody else in the group saying something's followed them home.
Wonderful.
We've had people in the group that have had paranormal experiences before they ever got involved with the group, and that's one of the reasons why they're involved, because they want answers. But to my knowledge, nothing's really bad happened or followed us home or, anything like that. So that's why, I talk about it in the book that I think the over-sensationalized, hype with the paranormal and people getting scratched and attacked, I'm not saying it never happens. It just hasn't happened to me, really. So
right. And God willing, it won't. But that's incredible. And I'm really thrilled that you made the time to come and talk to me and share your experiences and your insights with our audience. That's wonderful. And it's been a sincere pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, it's great meeting you too, Brent. And thanks for letting me share my story and my journey. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. And ladies and gentlemen, be sure to head over to Amazon and check out Curry's book, Walking in the Shadows of Strangers. And you can learn more about his incredible experiences and journeys. So please come back again, Curry. It'd be great to continue this dialogue and see what else we can jump into.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great talking with you, Brent. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Yeah, the pleasure is all mine. Thanks.
Get out!
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us here on tonight's show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please feel free to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Paranormal Portal Radio, as well as finding us on Twitter. We're on Twitter at Paranormal Portal, PORTL. And we'd love to have you stop by our YouTube page and subscribe and check out our shows there. We got hundreds of shows, Journeys into the Paranormal Portal. So I hope you'll check it out, guys. We're over there at youtube.com/Paranormal Portal. So hope to see you guys soon. We'll be back, of course, for more podcasts in the coming days. So we love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. Help each other out. Find the magic in every day. And remember to laugh as much as you can.
the wind.
I know.
Yes, Doctor. Listen to the wind. You must realize by now that the three of you haven't a chance. You must know in your minds that we can destroy you at any moment we desire. But, Dr. Heselius, you may still save your own life. Let the others go. Give them to us.
No. No, you will have to take all of us.
We warned you. You and the others are dead now.